brothers and sisters, the subject of the discourse today is Nibbana, the eternal bliss. This is a very deep topic which all aspirants should have a clear idea, because all their effort is to achieve this goal. Nibbana we often describe as final liberation. Liberation from what? Liberation from the cycle of births and deaths. Buddha said that the original consciousness is very bright and clear of any defilements. Buddha does not refer to how you were born as a human being in the way of your beginning in this samsara. He says, such probing is not necessary. Why? Because you are suffering from an ailment. It serves no purpose in trying to find out what caused this ailment, how it started, what is necessary at this stage is to cure the ailment and be free from it. So his approach to the problem of existence is to show you a path as an answer to your present problems. Present problem is that you are suffering. And our one aim is to get out of suffering. He ultimately, through his own effort, realized the cause of suffering and also how one should attain the final stage to be free from suffering and the path one has to follow. These four things, suffering, cause of suffering, cessation of suffering, and the path leading to the cessation of suffering, he realized. If one has to have an idea of what Nibbana is, we have to distinctly understand what suffering means. According to this philosophy, there is no sufferer as such, but there is suffering as a result of cause and effect. This again has to be probed. And after much investigation and analysis, we have to realize the true nature of suffering. When the true nature is revealed, you will realize that there is no sufferer, but there is suffering as a result of cause and effect, which is also a creation by the consciousness. Now let us analyze what suffering is. Buddha has clearly and very broadly outline what one suffers from. In that definition given by Buddha, in the first sermon, Dhammacakka Sutta, he says birth is suffering, old age is suffering, sickness is suffering, death is also suffering. To mix up with those people whom you like, whom you don't like, is also suffering. To separate from those people whom you like is also suffering. And in short, if you cannot get what you wish to get, that too also leads to suffering. These are realistic conditions of suffering to a worldling. He believes in a being, and in that belief he feels he is suffering from these instances. That is how a worldling feels about it. But Buddha goes deeper into this subject. He does not accept this human being as a worldling according to his philosophy. This is a mental creation. One would ask the question, how would one come to that conclusion? The first analysis we have to do should be to assess what this worldling can do in order to find out who he is and what he is. This worldling can see with his eyes. This worldling can hear with his ears. This worldling can experience smells with his nose. Experience taste with the tongue. Experience contact with the body and think too with the consciousness. That's how the world looks as his functions. His performance are these 6 performances in a worldly way. He attributes these performances to the sense bases. But a deeper analysis of the functioning of the sense bases indicates that it is the thought that arises connected with the sense base that enables you to perform the act which you now attribute to the sense base. The case of seeing with your eyes, it is not your eye that sees. Certainly, it plays an important role in enabling you to see, but it is the thought that arises in you, connected with the eye and the object of vision, that enables you to see. In the same way, it is the thought that arises connected with the ear and the object of sound that enables you to hear. In the same way, the nose connected with the smell and the thought that arises in connection with these 2 objects that enable you to smell. And in brief, I should say that all your sense bases perform their variegated functions through a thought created by you. It is the thought that enables you to perform these acts. Thought is the forerunner of all your activities. What are your activities? Activities of the six sense bases. It's the thought. But we can still go deeper into this aspect of how the thought is created. And that analysis will show you what value one could attach to the creation of such a thought. It is said that all the sense bases perform their functions in the way of enabling you to see, hear, smell, taste, contact and think in a similar manner. Except one difference, that what one sense base experiences is not the same experience the other sense base experience, because they are two different objects. If you take the case of the eye, it's the object of vision, and you take the case of the ear, the object of sound. In that respect, there is the difference. Other than that, the performance is the same. They follow a common pattern in creating the thought. Therefore, if we analyze one sense base, we can distinctly see how the other sense bases too function. Let us take the case of the eye. There is the eye which has the ability to see an object. There is also the light which enables you to see and observe. There is also the object of vision for you to see. The eye and the object of vision are made up of elements. And when they get together, the object of the vision reflects in the retina. That is the contact two physical objects make. At this stage, the consciousness arises, the eye consciousness. And these three are put together by the mental factor called contact. This mental factor put these three together and create a mental image of the visual object. From there onwards, it is a consciousness performance to create a thought for you to see the object. After the mental factor of contact, put these three together as cause and effect. Because the mental contact, there arises the feeling, that mental factor feeling, which enables you to feel whether the object is to your liking or to your dislike. And the third mental factor that arises is perception, which enables you to identify the object. The fourth mental factor that arises is the volition, which enables you to commit a volitional act in the way of seeing. The fifth mental factor is reflection, which helps all the mental activities in the way of projecting the object of the thought clearly to the mind. consciousness plays an important part in all these, because no mental factor arises without consciousness. When the mental factor arises, consciousness too is there, and the mental factor passes away, consciousness also disappears. So consciousness is present in all this. And the act of seeing is performed. But in that act of seeing, there is something else that is created in your mind, which is purely a mental creation and nothing else. What is that that is created in the mind? A delusion is created. The delusion that leads you to come to the conclusion, a wrong conclusion, that there is a being in you. And what is that delusion? The five grasping groups. It is not something planted from outside. In the act of seeing, certain mental factors perform their task. These very mental factors, they create this impression of a being by the creation of the five grasping groups in that thought. What are these five grasping groups? Grasping group of form, which is the mental image one created as a result of the mental factor contact functioning at that stage. And the grasping group of feeling is the result of the mental factor feeling, which enables you to identify this object as something present or unpresent. In the grasping factor of perception, or mental factor of perception created the grasping group of perception, that with your worldly knowledge you recognize what it is, identify the object. And in the volitional act you committed is also one of the grasping groups in the way of seeing, hearing, or functioning of any of the sense bases. In all these, the consciousness was present. Now you see, in the creation of a thought, to enable you to see, you have created five grasping groups in that thought. What are the five grasping groups? Grasping group of form, grasping group of feeling, grasping group of perception, grasping group of volitional act, and the grasping group of consciousness. These five created in your thought in the way of functioning this one of the bases, sense bases. And this grasping groups created in you a false mental picture of being within you. There is this false belief of I, which arose as a result, direct result of this presence of the being within you. This person, this author, this creator, this person who commits acts in the nature of function in the six sense bases. Buddha then goes on. Now, if you stop the process at that stage, brothers and sisters, we have a person there as a sufferer, because I have described to you the various aspects of suffering a world is being undergoes. And in the creation of the five grasping groups, in the thought which enables one to see, hear, smell, taste, contact and think, The five grasping groups as such, which created this fourth delusion in you as a being present, if we stop the process at that, then you have to naturally conclude that there is a sufferer. The question is if they are a sufferer. Certainly certain activities have been performed consequent to the mind functioning, creating various mental factors. And that has enabled one to see, enabled one to hear, enabled one to smell, taste, contact and feel. But the grasping groups, these five grasping groups, though they create that impression in one, Buddha further analyzes these five grasping groups and gives you the true picture of this delusion. What is the true picture? He gives five illustrations to enable you to realistically assess this delusion as something completely fabricated, completely to show a creation of imagination, by imagination. What are these five illustrations? He compares the grasping group of form to a collection of form, that is, bubbles, water bubbles, that normally get collected at a point where the flowing water is obstructed by some object. There is a collection of form. He says this grasping group of form can be compared to a collection of such air bubbles. No substance in that. It gives you a shape and a form, but there's nothing in it. Absolutely empty. Then he compares the grasping group of feeling to a water bubble that is created as a result of a drop of rain contacting the ground. A bubble is created and that disappears immediately after it appears. That is the assessment made to feelings. Then he compares your perceptions, your knowledge about things, what you have gathered from your birth in the way of education, observations, and other factors have resulted in the way of holding a heap of knowledge. This knowledge he compares to a mirage. Worldling gathers this knowledge thinking that there is substance in it, and there is no substance at all. It's purely mind created and nothing else. He compares the grasping group of mental, your volitional activities, to a young planted tree. Trunk. If you cut open this trunk, there is no pith or hardwood in that. It's one leaf folded over the other, a collection of such leaves only. No substance in that. So we perform the act of seeing, there's no substance in that. We perform the act of hearing, no substance in that. We perform the act of smelling, we perform the act of tasting, we perform the act of contact, we perform the act of thinking. No substance in that. But from outside appearance there is something which one can, in the way of feeling and in other aspects, experience through the sense basis, but there's no substance in that. No value. It's just a creation again. In the consciousness, the fifth grasping group, he says, he is a magician. He can create a lot of things for you. Now bear in mind, we have the being, we have the worldling, and we have now analyzed this worldling in the nature of his functions as a person who can see, hear, smell, taste, contact, and think. These are the 6 things he can do. We also analyzed further these functions and found that it is a thought that is created in the mind that enables this person to perform this act of seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, contacting, and thinking. We also probed further into this thought and found that this thought has created 5 grasping groups. This thought, the details of this thought has contributed to the creation of the delusion of 5 grasping groups. And it is this 5 grasping groups that has created in our mind a being, a person who has a form, a person who has feelings, a person who has perceptions, vast amount of knowledge, a person who can act with his hands and legs and his body and construct certain things. And in all these activities, the consciousness helps this person to carry out these various activities. A person has been created. And to prove that that creation is a delusion, we realistically analyze these 5 grasping groups with the help of illustrations cited by Buddha. And in those illustrations it was clearly indicated it is completely a delusion and nothing else. There is no such being as such. There is no such person as such. There is no such worldling as such. Then what is suffering? You next ask this question, what is suffering and who is suffering? There is suffering. Because the mind feels the suffering. But is there a sufferer? No sufferer. There is no sufferer. There is no being as such who is undergone this suffering. There is no person as such who is experiencing this suffering. But there is suffering. Why do you say there is suffering? That is the result of cause and effect. The cause is there. The mind creates the effect. The cause disappears. The effect is a thought, and that too disappears. Both are arising and passing away. That's your suffering. But unfortunately, not realistically understanding the true nature of what is dukkha and who is the person who is suffering from this dukkha, you have, as a result of the delusion created by the mind, created within you a false being. There is no sufferer. Buddha realized this. He realized this on the day he attained Buddhahood. He realized that there is no being as such existing in his world. Though in a worldly way we say there is a human being, a man and a woman. But there is no man, no woman. That's a mental creation. But there is the performance of 5 sense bases which are by nature create to create a delusion in you. They do not show the true nature of things. Creation and this world must continue. There must be beings in this world. They are not taken from one birth to the other by showing the true nature of themselves. They are being taken from one birth to the other by completely deluding them, or in other words, creating delusions in them. Creating mental pictures of an imaginary nature. And who is that creator? The consciousness, the magician. And those who believe in this creation, they continue to exist. They commit good acts which reacts with a good result. If they commit bad acts, that reacts in the way of suffering. These two lead this being, so-called being, from one birth to another. And that being proceeds to live in this world from birth to death, death to birth, as a result of the delusion in him. Once he realizes that there is no being as such, it is a mental creation, that things are happening in this world as a result of cause and effect, and that is mentally created by consciousness. There's nothing in this world. When you analyze the value of each of these incidents, nothing. But the consciousness has played this part as a magician in creating a world for you which does not exist. This world around you is your mental creation, brothers and sisters. You created this world as a being when there is no being. You created this world as a person existing in this world. You created this world through the six sense bases by receiving sense objects which are themselves a mental creation. So when I analyze the whole process of this existence of a being in this world, it is a big delusion and nothing else. Created by the mind. And when you develop your mind to higher state, brothers and sisters, you overcome the habits which you have created in conformity to the existence of this world. You break these habits and realistically see what you are doing. Realistically assess each of your acts which previously gave you some substance. Now you find they are all mental creations. You proceed with this developed mind to analyze further and further the so-called existence of this being, and ultimately realize that this being is a mental creation. There is a cause and effect, that too is felt by the mind. And when you analyze that, you see mind creates something, mind suffers from a certain thing. Or mind experiences a certain thing as a result of the creation. That creation appears and disappears. The result of that creation which is a feeling, that too arises and passes away. But he left, brothers and sisters. There's nothing left in this world. We have to analyze ourselves by making use of this time factor. Time factor indicates to a great extent, or it's supposed to a great extent, this delusion. When you analyze the time and find out whether there is substance in that in that creation, you will see that time is also a delusion and nothing else. We live in a world which turns on its own axis at the rate of 1,000 miles per hour. It also revolves round the sun, one round per 365 days, which is an year in the assessment of the normal human being. When this turning goes on at the rate of 1,000 miles per hour, the face that faces the sun is demarcated from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. as day. That face which is away from the sun, the opposite side, is demarcated as night from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. But this is a revolving earth at a fast speed of 1,000 miles per hour. We are clear about this situation, that there is a fast movement of this earth from one side to the other side. Let us say there is a movement from the left to the right at a speed of 1,000 miles per hour. And if you stand anywhere on this earth, the area on your left is the future yet to come, and the area that has passed you on the right side is the past. From the future to the past, there is a quick movement of 1,000 miles per hour. And when you stand, this future and the past merge in front of you. Where is your presence? Your presence is a very quick movement, and it has no demarcation. It has no one point. It's a movement only, a fast movement from the future to the past. Future and the past merge together in your presence. You are confronted with this situation. On your left is the future, on your right is the past. And between these two there is a very fast, quick movement. And that is impermanence. Everything is impermanent. So from that realistically you can understand that all your activities which you have performed as a human being have been performed in your mind. Because what can you do in the past, brothers and sisters? And what can you do in the future? Those two areas are beyond your control. And if at all you have to perform anything, you have to perform that act in the present moment. Where is this present moment? It's a fast moment, anicca. When you assess all your activities in the light of this situation, may I ask you the question whether you ever exist even in this? If you exist, then you are performing certain activities. Then if we give value to these activities, then we say that you are existing in the world. But with the situation as described by me earlier, future merging with the past and there is no presence, and that no person can act in the future or act in the past because you have finished your action in the past. So what are you now? It's a pure imagination and nothing else. This factor amply proves the delusion of the five aggregates. The five aggregates created the being, when in fact and in truth there is no such being. The being has to be assessed by its activities. And we geographically analyze the situation with the revolution of the earth on its own axis and round the sun. We clearly understand that there is no time called the present, that there is the future and there is the past. You can't act in the future because it is yet to come. You can't act in the past because time has lapsed. So what are you? What are your activities? Simply a delusion created by the mind. Now you see, Buddha described this situation 2,600 years ago when preaching the world that there is in this world impermanence and nothing else. Impermanence in everything. Impermanence in your very existence. Impermanence in the existence of a being. Impermanence in your body, impermanence in your mind. Isn't that what I geographically describe to you? Because there can't be a person in the future. If at all there was a person in the past, he is not existing now. It's past. And what is in the present? Nothing in the present. So what are you? You are absolutely a delusion. There is no person, no being as such. So where is dukkha? A pure imagination. You have created the being within you. Your consciousness has done that. And things that are happening as cause and effect, mentally created, you heap all these activities on your head and say, I am suffering. When actually there is no sufferer. When actually there is no person as such. It is purely a mental creation. There is dukkha. That is also mental creation. But there is no sufferer as such. If we call it dukkha or suffering in a worldly way, but when you analyze it, it is merely a cause and an effect. The cause has arisen and the effect is created. The cause disappears, the effect also disappears. Nothing. Therefore, this is a big illusion, delusion. Then Buddha says, this delusion is created by desire. Desire created this delusion in you. How? We go through certain experience through the six sense bases in the way of creation of thought. That thought is a composition of certain mental factors, the five common mental factors. One of the mental factors is mental factor of feeling. And in every act of yours in the nature of functioning the sense basis, this mental factor feeling arises in the thought you create. And that mental factor gives you an impression that what you experience through the sense base is either good or bad. That's all. You got deceived by this. You thought there is substance in this good and substance in this bad. To enjoy the good and to suffer from the bad. You created thoughts. You created thoughts of attachment to further the good feeling you experience, which clearly is a delusion created by the mind. You created thoughts of aversion to display your dislike to that sensation which you received through the mental factor of feeling. What did these two contribute to you? A thing called desire, attachment. There are the two opposites, one something pleasant and the other unpleasant. You would like the unpleasant, but you would like the pleasant. Therefore, naturally, a urge arose in your mind to pursue the pleasant, the pleasure. And when you pursue the pleasure, if there is a displeasure, you don't like the displeasure. So thoughts are created to pursue the pleasure, and thoughts are created also to indicate the displeasure. And that is lobha and dvesa. These two activities contribute to the creation of desire. What happened to you? Desire created grasping. Desire created existence. Desire created your birth. This consciousness has no power to move from one birth to another on its own. It is this desire which created the grasping, which created the existence of another in the nature of continuity, and for that purpose created the birth. So at the end of a span of life, I described to you how the birth and death occurs, and that procedure takes place, and the desire pushes your consciousness to another birth. As a result of grasping existence, this happens. And the cause of this continuity is desire. Now you have a proper assessment of desire. You have given unnecessary values to a thought. The feeling of pleasantness and feeling of unpleasantness were all created by the mind. You also, now with your intelligence, can understand that something which is pleasant to one is unpleasant to another. Something which is unpleasant to one is pleasant to another. Therefore it is purely a mental creation, nothing else. But you attach value to this pleasantness and the unpleasantness and created desire. And it is this desire that helped to create this imaginary being. It is this desire that helped to create this imaginary being. The grasping created the existence, and the existence pushed this consciousness to another birth. And for the continuity of this consciousness in the next birth, it created the covering, and that covering was created by your own act karma. So a new creation is made. It continues like this. So when you analyze desire, you find that desire is a habit which you have created in your mind. And this habit was created as a result of giving values to an imagination of yours. You gave values to the present nature you experience. You gave values to the unpleasant nature you experience. You created the anxiety in you to continue the present feeling, and also to dispel the unpleasant feeling in the creation of a thought. And these two things, your consciousness falling either to the one extreme of pleasantness, the other extreme of unpleasantness, created the desire. Buddha found out that this imaginary being created by the five grasping groups is the result of a desire. You know, when there is desire, there is always the creation of thought to maintain desire. And in every such thought that is created, you create the five grasping groups. These five grasping groups create the deception of a being being present in you. And it is this desire that creates the thoughts, and it is thoughts that create the five grasping groups, and ultimately led you to believe that there is a being. Therefore Buddha said, get rid of this desire. How? These additional thoughts that you are creating as a result of an experience gained through the sense base is something uncommon to the mind. The thought force is given to you to perform the act of seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, contacting and seeing, that's all, and hearing. That doesn't in any way create a desire. This thought force perform those acts only, but the subsequent creation of thoughts that led to the creation of desire. When there is desire, you have to think, because desire needs constant feeding. It is a habit. The habit is strong when there is a constant repetition of the habit. Repetition of the habit means performing the function over and over and over again. And that is like maintaining a lamp. If you want to maintain the lamp with the light, you have to feed that lamp with the necessary ingredients like oil and the wick. If you constantly feed the lamp in that manner, the lamp will maintain its light. Otherwise it will be blown out. In the same way, now you have created this habit, this desire, and to maintain this desire you have to create thoughts that lead to the creation of an attachment, or thoughts that lead to the creation of an aversion. Both these contribute to desire. Therefore, what you should do is stop unnecessary thinking that can be performed. Because consciousness is not there for the creation of unnecessary thoughts. It is there only for the purpose of enabling you to create a thought and function the six sense bases. This additional activity of the mind, the way of creating thoughts leading to desire or promoting desire, is something additional, something which you have cultivated in your mind as a result of habit. Give up that. And if you can give up that, what happens to the desire? Desire will fade out. The habit is not strong now. Habit was kept in full strength as a result of the repetition of the habit. But now there is no repetition. You are careful to see that you do not create unnecessary thoughts, and that can be done. It is a very practical approach to kill the habit of creating desire. And as a result you find the desire disappears. Buddha clearly says that if desire is the cause of suffering, now that there is no desire, there is no suffering. There is no sufferer. And you clearly understand the true state of things. And in this light, you can analyze your present self as a being. What am I? I am only a cause and effect and nothing else. I am only a cause and effect. A thought is created and I perform a certain act. The thought which I created is no longer there, it has vanished. The act also arose and passed away. That is all you are. All that you have done in the past is creation of such activity and nothing else. Maybe as a person who has educated himself to hold important jobs or perform important functions, he also does the same thing. He creates a thought, he performs an act. The thought that he has created arose and passed away, and the act he performed arose and passed away. Isn't that all that you have done in the past? Your future is yet to come. This present, no presence. I indicated to you that there is no present moment. So what are you? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. And that is your final realization, brothers and sisters. We have imagined a lot. We have created delusions and lived in delusions. Buddha has clearly analyzed and indicated to you that you are only creating delusions with the help of consciousness. Now what happens when you get rid of desire? You are a pure person. You have realized what this body and mind is. You have realized that there is no person as such in this body and mind. You have also realized that thoughts have created this desire in me. And now I have truly analyzed the functioning of the mind. And I produce no additional thoughts. I make use of my consciousness to perform the activities of the six sense bases and limit my activity to that with the consciousness. Therefore, the desire that did everything to me in the way of misleading me, creating delusions in me, I have weakened day by day by watching my mind mindfully and not permitting thoughts to occur. Also at the same time, analyzing all such creations in the way of thoughts and realizing that they have no substance at all, that they are empty, that they are also delusions, and thereby I have discouraged the consciousness in creating further and further thoughts. Now my mind is free of unnecessary creation of thoughts. I make use of my mind for the purpose of seeing if I want to see, for the purpose of hearing if I want to hear, for the purpose of tasting, for the purpose of smelling, for the purpose of contacting and thinking when I wish to perform those acts. At other times, it's a peaceful mind. No thoughts disturb me. I have realized the truth. If I had anything called desire, I have drained out desire completely. And resulting from desire, if there were other defilements, they too have disappeared from me. I have become a perfect being. I bear no malice to anybody. I bear no hatred to anybody. I practice metta, loving kindness to everybody. I do not possess as such anything, because there is no being in me. Therefore I am not the possessor of anything in this world. That which belongs to me in a worldly way belongs to every other person. So I freely give to everybody what I have. I attach no value to any of those things. I am a perfect being. And it is that perfection, brothers and sisters. It is the realization of what you are exactly, that you are no being, that you are no person, that you are a mental delusion created by the mind in the nature of the five grasping groups. And there's nothing in me now. I have realized the truth. I have performed the functions I am expected to perform. I have nothing further to perform. I am free. I have realized Nibbana. And this is everlasting peace I search for. And I have the consciousness. Once I reach the end of my lifespan, my body will terminate its existence. This consciousness within me, which pushed itself from one birth to another as a result of desire, grasping, existence, and create the birth, no longer exists in me. Therefore, this consciousness disappears. If I had wrong views about the so-called I that is in me, and the result of that creation, I became a possessor of things. Now when there is no consciousness, I get into void and temporarily sees the end of my existence. And it is this void ultimately make you finally realize that there is no person as such, that there is no continuity. You end your existence in this world of life, deaths, life's births and deaths. We no longer be born in this world because there is no delusion that will be created in your mind now as you realize the true nature of yourself. That is the peace which you look forward to. That is the everlasting peace. And that is Nibbana. Brothers and sisters, you all have gone a long way to realize this truth. And when you realize this truth, you will be aware that this so-called being within you is purely a delusion. That the worldling itself is a delusion created by the mind. And you have analytically seen through the whole process and realized the truth that there is no being as such existing in this world. This existence is purely a mental creation. May you all attain Nibbana. Akasattha ca bhummattha devanaga mahiddhika punyantang anumodikva tiran rakkhantu lokasasanam. Akasattha ca bhummattha devanaga mahiddhika punyantang anumodikva tiran rakkhantu desanam. Akasattha ca bhummattha devanaga mahiddhika punyantang anumodikva tiran rakkhantu mang paranti.